Hey Internet, I am Magnifica Sylvie La Chardonniere. I am a Laurel in the West Kingdom in the SCA, and I wanted to talk to you today about the Modern Maker Volume 2, Pattern Manual 1580 to 1640. To be completely honest, this book is the entire reason I started going through my book nerding series. I'm sure I'll do more of them, but this is where I wanted to get to. So without further ado, all right. So this is Modern Maker Volume 2 by Matthew Nagy. It is pulling together some 16th and I guess technically 17th century costuming information from 1580 to 1640. So Volume 2 is very specifically a pattern manual. And I want to jump to on page 13. He goes through the manuals. Ooh, there we go. Much better. All right, so he's going through the manuals that he has pulled patterns from in making this book. So we have Alsiga, which is 1589. We have, 1589 Spanish from Madrid. We have Frail, which is Frail. And honestly, I don't know how to pronounce any of this, so if I get it wrong, just correct me in your head. So Frail, which is 1588 from Seville. And then we have Bergen, which is 1618 from Valencia. We have Audoxar, which is 1640 from Madrid. So they're all essentially Spanish tailoring manuals. So the next section that we want to go into is where he starts talking about what the bara is and how it's used and how to make up a bara tape. This is critical when we get to the patterns a little bit further on in the book. And this idea, this concept is in fact mind-blowing when you get it. It has been just absolutely eye-opening for me as far as expressing patterns. So this section here about how to make a bara tape and how the bara method is used, this is essentially an abbreviated repeat of what we had in Volume 1. It's sort of the baseline information you need to know as we go through the book. So the next section he goes into is drafting the men's doublet. And he goes through step by step how you draft the doublet, starting with the baseline, doing the perpendiculars to the baseline, drawing the shoulder, and then connecting the dots. Anybody who has Volume 1 or watched the previous video knows this is very much in line with what the early sections of Volume 1. The nice part here is that he also does the same thing for a woman's doublet. Variants. So he does the same thing for the women's doublet. So we draft the baseline and then we draft the perpendiculars. Then you come back in with the shoulder sweep and closing the shape and connecting the dotted lines. Then we go to the front where we draft the baseline, do the perpendiculars. This is a Spanish late period outfit, so it does have a very, very deep point in the front. That's something to keep in mind. All right, so the next section that's really important, we start going through men's doublet. And he has some fabulous images that are the garments constructed. And then we have the pattern. So here we have an image of the garment as constructed. And here we have the pattern. In this case, it's the men's jupon. This is a basic jupon doublet, I guess, without a skirt. And so he goes through how you draft the shape, start with the back, go to the front, make the collars, and you end up with a garment that looks like this. There are many variations that you can make on that. And this shape here is a baseline for the men's garment going forward. And then we have a couple of other men's garments. We've got a couple of sleeves. We've got a jerkin. And all there are 12 different men's pattern. Then if we jump forward a little bit, we get to the women's garments, the women's doublet and the women's bodies. So the tailoring manuals did not devote as much time to the women's garments, and they do actually seem to agree quite a bit. So what we have here is there's technically, I would call it, two women's patterns, one for the low-necked body, low-necked bodies, or a pair of bodies, or cupino baxo, which is the very deep sleeve arched front that is used both for the bodies and then for the kirtles. And then we also have the women's doublet, which has a high neck and a collar on it. And this, of course, can be made without a collar if that's the style you're trying to recreate. But again, the different manuals sort of agree on how this is drafted, so it's only represented once in the book here. Finally, and very exciting to me, if we jump ahead a little bit, there is a pattern which I believe, conjectural pattern, and this would be the same bodice pattern with a flat front, so with a significant amount of the very, very deep point removed. Removing the point like this, I do think makes it possible to push this bodice pattern back a little bit to the early, possibly as far back as, say, the mid 15th century, very early 16th century. So this is then the pattern represented with the point sort of knocked off. This is a fabulous starting point, say, if you were doing 15th century recreations. Last but not least, we go through the women's patterns. We've got the gown that has no waist. And then we've got a couple of cloaks, a couple of coats, which honestly, the coat is pretty sexy. Not gonna lie. Very sexy coat, both for the men's and for the women's. At the very end, we have another section of the book that goes through hand sewing techniques. This is very much in line with what we had in Volume 1, a very abbreviated version of how to do the hand sewing methods without too much time spent going through the steps that you'd need to apply these to sewing this together. This section is actually blown out in Volume 3, which I'm sure I'll be going through for the book series, for book nerding on it. But this is what I wanted to go through today with Volume 2. In closing, I found Volume 1, and I started working with Volume 1, and it was mind-blowing and absolutely stellar. And then moving on to Volume 2 and having all of these patterns for all these different garments. And I didn't even talk about the 5 different breech patterns that are available for men's, including the Portuguese sailor poofy pants. If that's what you love, then love it. And the pattern, there is a pattern in here that I believe would be proper for that. So if you're looking for 16th century, specifically Spanish patterns, this is a fabulous place to start. If you're looking for English patterns, it's a good place to start, and then you can back into what the English are based on what you know the differences are between what the Spaniards were doing and what the English or the French or different areas are doing. I think that it is a fabulous resource to have when you've moved past the beginning stage of costuming in the SCA. I don't know that I'd recommend it as the first costuming book in the SCA, but definitely if 16th century is your groove, I can't imagine not having this. So that's what I have. If you have any questions, please contact me. I am again Magnifica Sylvie La Chardonnière, and thank you for your time. Sylvie La Chardonnière. I am a Laurel in the West Kingdom who cannot look at the camera not to save my life.